This time on Watchers of Tomorrow. Dead or alive, you're listening to a podcast.
That was dark. Hello, welcome to Watchers of Tomorrow, the sci-fi review and critique show that you can, in fact, not buy for $1. My name is Gepwin, and I'm joined by my friend and co-host, Dr. Isix.
Hi.
Mostly because we haven't set up a Patreon yet, so, yeah.
Maybe someday. We'll think about it.
We are doing the movies, because we do that sometimes.
Yes, a feature-length extravaganza where we're going to have a big spike in our hand. Wait, never mind.
Yeah, if this is your first episode, if you got drawn in by the shiny movie things, mostly we do Star Trek stuff, and we'll probably talk a lot about Star Trek stuff, even though we're supposed to be talking about a movie, because we do that.
Yeah, it happens sometimes. But I guess the important question is Robocop in continuity with Star Trek?
Maybe. It could be. There's nothing particularly to say it's not.
So we can say it is.
Depends on which one. This is near future in a timeline that we don't really explore. We have no idea how near future Robocop is.
Well, it's the near future of the 80s, so it's obviously the 90s.
Which means that according to most Star Trek stuff, it should have been right in the middle of the eugenics wars.
Yes. So I guess it would, be sort of fitting, and also with the media breaks, it could be, that's that thing we're trying to not talk about. We're talking about Star Wars space lasers.
Yeah.
Because the 80s.
Yep, space lasers, militarized nuclear platforms. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which is a Star Trek thing, actually.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gary Seven and his shenanigans there. Anyway.
Yes, of course. Robocop, the 1987 sci-fi cult classic, something in that range.
Yeah, somewhere in that, yeah. Maybe a little bit of both, depending on who you talk to and when, I suppose. Because I'd say this is like one of those films that is generally well regarded, but there's been so much time and stuff that's kind of come out since then, some of which touches upon some of the similar themes, that it's maybe not as appreciated as it was closer to its release.
Yeah, obviously we'll get into more as we go, but I think it's interesting, having read a lot of stuff this week. I think a lot of people have taken a lot of the stuff that's been made after this and reapplied it backwards onto Robocop as a movie to have some weird takes that aren't actually in this film.
Whoops! We're doing the retroactive, media discourse again.
Yeah, so we'll get to that, because there's some interesting stuff of like, well, this is a movie about cyborgs, which means it has to have these themes that don't seem to be represented in the film.
Of course, why would it not have these themes not represented in the film? Because Yeah.
This film was written by Edward Newmar and Michael Miner. Both of them worked on Robocop as a spec script early on in their careers. They'd worked on some other things. Apparently the idea was spawned while working on the production side of the Blade Runner movie. And then it got turned into a spec script. And then both of them went on to work on Robocop 2, Robocop 3, Robocop the TV show, Robocop the video game, Robocop the other TV show.
Also a Lawnmower Man 2.
Yeah. Yeah, we had Lawnmower Man 2, and then eventually Newmar went on to write the film Starship Troopers, which was also directed by Paul Verhoeven. This is the second Verhoeven film that we've looked at, though we're doing them out of order.
Yes, which is maybe the best way to do it, because Verhoeven is kind of like that sometimes.
Yeah. So, of course, the director, Paul Verhoeven, I don't usually talk about directors because they don't do as much of the writing stuff, which is what we are mostly talking about. But he's very well known for his over-the-top American films. This was one of his earlier American films. I think he only had one English language film before doing this.
Yeah, I forget which one that would be, actually. Yeah. Flesh and Blood.
Yeah, I think it was that one, which is not science fiction. This was his first foray into science fiction, which is a place that he was quite good at.
Yes.
Which, then he would do Total Recall, which we've already covered, which is also an interesting, weird take on sci-fi. And then, of course, later Starship Troopers, which was widely misunderstood when it came out. And The Hollow Man, which looked really stupid and I never saw, but I should probably give a chance.
I've seen it. It's basically Kevin Bacon becomes the Invisible Man and is kind of creep about it.
Yeah, that's kind of the vibe I got.
Yeah. Though, if I recall, there's like also the chemicals that makes him invisible also like makes him more of a creep somehow, even beyond he's now invisible and can creep on people. But anyway,
but the whole thing with the Invisible Man is, how would a person live if they knew they didn't have consequences for their actions? Saying the drug made them extra evil kind of takes away from the general theme.
I don't remember if that was like directly text of the film or like maybe the people in the film were being speculative of like, why is he acting so strange? It's been a while since I've seen it. It was meh. Also, he did Showgirls.
Yeah, he also did Showgirls, which, as I've said before, is probably not taking place in our reality.
Probably not. I've not actually seen it, but anyway.
I've only seen it once. It is really weird. Anyway, I'm going to try my best to get through the cast efficiently, because as with all movies, there is too much cast for our general format, where we get to skip half of the people in the show because they're always in the show.
Yes. So, everyone's guest stars this time.
Yeah. So, of course, we are starring Peter Weller as Murphy/Robocop. He was not a super well-known star at this time. He had worked on Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, which was
glorious.
It was another like sci-fi cult film, which is one of the two strengths that he brought to RoboCop, being able to bring in an already like weird cult sci-fi audience. From the reading I was doing, the other thing that really got him the part was he was literally the only person who wanted to do it.
Now, there was somebody else who wanted to do it, and that was Arnold Schwarzenegger, actually.
I wasn't sure if he wanted to, or if they just...
Well, he wanted to work with Verhoeven, but there was a problem in that Schwarzenegger was too big to fit in the suit.
Well, they hadn't designed the suit. They just said that they would never be able to make a suit that fit him and did not look like a man stuffed into a trash can.
Yeah. So it's like, well, we'll get someone who's a little leaner, maybe, and they'll look bulkier while wearing a thing.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Which is actually kind of interesting in the workout styles, because Peter Weller is not your normal action hero from the 80s because he's too skinny, but he was also an expert martial artist.
So you can kick your butt.
Yeah. So this is what it looks like when someone can actually do action stuff. And it's one of the reasons that he was able to perform so well in this stupid, bulky suit, because he had a lot of practice with body control from martial arts.
And mime, because he got some help there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he wanted the role, he got the role, and he did really good in the role, though he practiced in a suit that was way more mobile than this one. He was very constantly frustrated with how limited his mobility was in this stupid, bulky plastic thing.
Yes. The initial, idea in terms of how he's supposed to move was a little bit more snake-like, as they describe it, or sort of like a natural, like everything just kind of moving simultaneously. But in the end product, we can obviously see it's a little bit more jerky. It's like everyone doing the robot dance, except he's just walking around. Because, the actual suit was much more bulky, as you said. So like, we have to kind of redo what we want to do here in order to make it possible for him to move without looking ridiculous. And so, yeah, they had to sort of change that up a bit.
Yeah, he was also supposed to have at least a week of practice in the suit, but they took so long to make the thing, they gave it to him like the day before they needed a film.
Yeah. Which ended up with some delays in terms of the filming schedule, which left a lot of folks unhappy, but the result was actually pretty good. So they're like, oh, okay, so I guess it kind of was worth it.
I
we
think
lost a lot of money.
Was it him? I think he got fired at one point by Verhoeven, and then they were like, oh, sorry, that was a mistake. So yeah, this whole film was a mess.
Yeah. So it was one of those things where you kind of, it's like, is this thing just going to fall apart on us? Uh-oh.
All right, next we have Nancy Allen as Officer Ann Lewis. Her first major role was the main antagonist bully girl in the 1976 film Carrie. She also had leads in I Want to Hold Your Hand, Spielberg's film 1941. And then immediately before being in Robocop, she was in two other sci-fi films, The Strange Invaders and The Philadelphia Experiment.
Yes, but not The Philadelphia Experiment 2. That was much later.
Then we've got Daniel O'Harely as the Old Man, or the CEO. He's only ever referred to as the Old Man.
Yes. He was an older fellow, and he is an actor who's been in a few things, and he's now since passed away, but you might remember him as from Twin Peaks or The Dead or L.A. Law and Whiz Kids, and what else you got, Capwin?
He was the reptilian dude in The Last Starfighter.
Oh, yeah.
With all the makeup. He started acting in 1944, so he's by far the most experienced guy on the cast. He was in the 70s epic Waterloo.
Napoleon of some sort, eh?
Yep. So he's been around.
Star Galactica. Yeah. Barnaby Jones.
We've got someone everyone's going to recognize as Ronnie Cox playing Dick Jones. He was cast against type because before Robocop, he was best known for playing good guys in a lot of cop films and things like that. He was in Deliverance. He was in Bound for Glory. He was in Taps. He was in Beverly Hills Cop 1 and 2.
Yep.
Later on, he will be the bad guy in Total Recall, the douchebag in Stargate SG-1, and the captain that you don't really like but can't really call bad in Star Trek The Next Generation. Yeah,
the one that rubs everyone the wrong way. He also shows up in a number of other things like Cop Rock.
Oh no, that thing. He was quoted as saying that this is the reason that he went on to play so many villains, because he had so much more fun getting to play a douchebag than a good guy.
You just I was like, oh, all right, so I've, had the nice chill fellow dad character. Now I'm just going to go and stretch out and be as mean as possible. Though I did particularly like his role in Leverage, where he was kind of going back to the nicer guy sort of thing as a retired, guy who was doing some reminiscing about a heist that took place and that he was investigating and things like that.
Oh, yeah. Now, the one that you will also definitely recognize is Kurtwood Smith playing Clarence Boddicker. He was in several movies in the 80s, better known for something called Staying Alive and Flashpoint, which I hadn't seen, but they look interesting. He'd later on be in Star Trek The Undiscovered Country as the President of the Federation. Later on, he would be in Voyager as that evil guy from the Year of Hell.
The Krenim Captain guy.
Yeah, he's just been in so much shit. The thing that he's definitely the best known for is playing Red Foreman in that 70s show, which he just keeps getting dragged back into because he is currently playing Red Foreman in that 90s show.
Just keep cycling back here. They keep pulling me back in. But he's been in a lot of other things, sometimes one-off characters, sometimes a little more recurring. Like he was apparently in a bunch of characters, including Commissioner Gordon in Beware the Batman.
And he's been in Psych and Oh, there was one other thing that I knew personally. Now I can't remember. Oh yeah, Malcolm in the Middle. He's just been at least in one-offs in basically everything.
Pig, goat, banana, cricket.
Yeah.
Yeah. Turbo.
Then, nearly finally, we have Miguel Ferrer as Bob Morton. Ferrer has been a guest in a lot of 80s shows. He had parts in Magnum P.I. where he played the Magnum P.I.'s dad's younger self in a flashback.
Why not?
Yeah. And he was also in The Search for Spock.
Dun dun dun.
It was the helmsman on the Excelsior. That was fun. Those are all the main people that I want to make sure we mention. There's a few gangsters, and I will just go out of my way to point out we have Ray Weiss again playing a gangster called Leon Nash, because he was that totally not a Vulcan who was in Who Watches the Watchers.
Yeah, so we're Star Trek alumni, future and past here, all over the place.
Yeah, I think this movie is very interesting going through the cast list, because this is such a big name. Like, everyone has heard of these movies, and not a single one of these guys, none of them were unsuccessful by any measure. But none of them went on to here is the giant star of whatever. Their career got so fully launched by this that they were just getting leading man roles everywhere. This is a movie that's cast is entirely made up of character actors.
This guy was in Dumb and Dumber as the detective. Okay. That's Felton Perry, by the way.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that this holds up so well, is because every single actor is a character actor. You don't have big name star dude anywhere on this cast.
Edward Edwards was in Leaving Earth.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing we've heard of.
I can keep doing this all day, by the way, so you probably should stop me.
Yeah, so we're gonna go in to a newsreel, straight into a newsreel report, which is something that totally won't get reused in a later collaboration between this writer and director. I'm surprised that this isn't used more. This is such a efficient in-universe way to give exposition.
Yeah, it's like the captain's log of movies.
Yeah, it's amazing. All right, so world news. We're in a world on the brink of nuclear war in Africa. There's large-scale military hardware in orbit that the president is visiting for press tour reasons. And the Detroit Police Department has been under siege by violent gangs and has been privatized and contracted out by the city to a mega corporation called Omni Consumer Products, henceforth referred to as OCP.
This seems a little sketchy. Lone Star. Are they the competitors?
Most of this stuff is happening now. The militarization of the police, the privatization of the police. Later they mention how this company is dabbling in privatized prisons and hospitals. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in our world, the order was reversed, and that's it. So.
So we see an overly crowded, chaotic police department where Officer Murphy has just been transferred from a nicer part of the city. He gears up and is sent out with his partner Lewis, who we meet beating up a bad guy twice her size in the lobby. There's a lot of other random stuff going on. Somebody's just gotten killed. Everyone's angry. There's talk of unionizing and striking. I do not want to have to talk about police unions. My God.
Yeah. This is, I guess, back in an era before the totality of what police unions are really kind of about was kind of known.
I feel like we need to draw a hard distinction for what we're going to be talking about in this movie versus a real world police union, because this is an actual union. These are corporate employees who are forming a union to negotiate with a corporate entity that is their boss, not a quasi-political organization that is unionized against the state trying to make laws that are curtailing their massive power.
Yes. So there's a little bit difference here.
So at the OCP Tower, all of the executives have been called to a meeting held by the CEO, who they only refer to as the Old Man. It is to announce the official start of their big project, Delta City, which is a modern corporate metropolis that's going to be built on top of the ruins of old Detroit. Their only problem is that Detroit is the epicenter of, like, every violent crime that anyone could ever imagine. It's basically the thing that conservatives told you New York was doing in the 80s.
Yeah, so you can't go down the street without getting robbed 15 times and you'll lose an arm in the process.
Yeah. Basically that. There's just violent crime everywhere, and they kind of need to do something about it before they bring in 1 million plus construction workers.
I will also say that this plan, this Delta City business, seems like it was basically lifted by the folks behind Final Fantasy VII a few years later.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of very similar stuff happening.
Yes.
The 80s and 90s were a wild time for corporations. So, to the end of ending crime, the company's current, president under the CEO, Dick Jones, has been working on his new automated military-grade police robot called Ed 209, a bipedal walker with gun hands that makes puma noises.
If he has guns for hands, how can he hug his friends?
With guns. Maybe the real friends are the bullets we met along the way. So Jones enlists a young executive named Kenny to help demonstrate the automated police functions of Ed. He is given a gun and told to threaten it. He is given 20 seconds to drop his gun, which he does. However, the robot does not hear the gun because there's carpet.
So, thump versus clunk.
So he then proceeds to shoot Kenny 200 times. I know that it is 200 times because that is how many squibs they made this poor actor wear, and they had to do it twice.
Yeah. In fact, this is one of the scenes that they cut down, for the theatrical release because they didn't want to get an X rating.
Yeah, we'll talk about that because there's some interesting logic on the argument between the styles of violence in this movie that Verhoeven was having with the censorship board. Ed only stops firing when they physically rip his control panel apart.
Okay, just take it apart. It's the only way.
So the old man's very disappointed in Jones because this setback could cost them millions if they have to delay construction. And this opportunity is then seized by junior executive Bob Morton. And he swoops in to talk about how his backup project that they made, the Robocop project, is basically complete. And within a few months, they can have a working prototype because he's been moving prime candidates into high-risk assignments in the police force.
Well, I guess Bob seems more personable than Dick, but this is still kind of a Dick move.
Yeah. The old man's very impressed, and Jones is very, very angry.
Seething.
We then cut back to Murphy and Lewis, who are getting coffee. Murphy's practicing his fancy and very, very unsafe gun flips that he learned to impress his kid who saw it on TV.
Yeah, well, make sure you don't have any bullets in that thing before you even think about trying something like that.
Just never, ever do this.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah, maybe get a fake gun.
Yeah, you can maybe do it if you have a fake gun on a movie set with like a prop guy who can ensure that it's a fake gun and there's no bullet anywhere in the general vicinity. Just mostly don't do this.
Yes. Maybe a Nerf gun.
Yeah, maybe. So before they can get their drinks, there is an all-units call on the radio, and they run off to find Boddicker and his gang escaping some sort of robbery. His crew seems to be completely inept because they burnt all of the money that they stole.
Well, I guess we don't have a pile of money anymore. We should maybe we could just dump it out the back and hope the police will stop chasing us because they want to pick up the money.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It's like, here, money. They also find that there's cops on their tail. They all get their shotguns out and they're ready to shoot at the back door. Meanwhile, Murphy grabs 2 guns and starts hanging out of the car window.
I don't think this is a smart way to try to capture some criminals. Just saying.
Yeah. They start shooting. The cop car pulls alongside so that they can't really get to it well. They exchange fire for a while. Murphy takes out one of the gang members' legs, and then they decide to just throw him out onto the cop car to slow them down.
Well, Clarence, I don't think you're going to be getting a good review from your employee here. But he's dead, so, you know.
This lets them flee into an abandoned steel mill that the gang seems to be using as some sort of impromptu base.
I actually rather like the general, I guess, vibe of this place. It's very, like, post-industrial decay sort of things going on here. If you just, like, breathe in the air, you're going to get tetanus.
Yeah. I forget where they filmed this. This was an actual weird abandoned steel mill somewhere.
Yeah, a lot of this filming around the city is done in Dallas, but I forget where they filmed this.
Yeah, this one was definitely a different location. I remember reading it wasn't in their main filming area.
Ah.
So backup's unavailable, so Murphy and Lewis decide to go in anyway, which is a monumentally bad decision. This is supposed to, I realize, be about how completely fucked up and underfunded the police in this city are as an organization. But since they do literally every single thing wrong, I'm going to recap it as a list of all the shit that they shouldn't have done. So,
yes.
First they go in by themselves with no backup when they know that their van is outside and disabled, and they don't know how many people are in there, and they know that they're not going anywhere, so they really have no reason to rush at all.
Indeed. You know, just kind of park a little bit down the road and keep an eye out for anyone sort of trying to flee the area, and there you go.
Second, they split up immediately for basically no reason, and with no plan.
Yes. Well, maybe Lewis is trying to punk Murphy here. It's like, yeah, you're the new guy in the department. I'm gonna take these guys down myself. Oh, this is not working. Great.
So Lewis finds a guy peeing, and he distracts her with his dick and knocks the gun from her hands, something that he can only do because for some reason she was standing 3 inches away from him.
Yes. Also, she gets his attention with bubble gum, so yeah, Lewis, you maybe shouldn't be a cop anymore. Just
Murphy surprises 2 guys watching TV. He's alone, doesn't have good cover, so when he announces himself, he has to shoot one of them before cornering the other one. And this is where we get the important dead or alive, you're coming with me line, which will come up later, so we need to mention that. And Lewis is now unconscious because of her dumb move, so Murphy again has no backup, and while he's trying to cuff a guy one-handed while covering him with a gun, he's suddenly surrounded.
It's like, oh yeah, this is a gang, not just 2 guys on a couch.
Yes.
Huh.
You like did not check your entrances or exits from this location at all, and then tried to like arrest a guy single-handedly.
Not smart.
Yeah. So they did literally everything wrong, which I guess is supposed to be about how inept this police force is because of their underfunding. But you still could have, avoided one of these freaking things, right?
So don't split up at the very least, because then you might have someone who can watch your back while you cuff the dude.
Did you split the party? Don't split the party.
Yes, you split the party, yeah.
So Boddicker gets a sadistic streak out by torturing Murphy, shooting his hand off, letting the guys shoot him up with shotguns, blowing off his arm and leg, and eventually just like shooting him in the head while he's crawling on the ground, slowly dying because he says that they're done having fun and they need to go.
Yeah, this is another bit that had a bit was cut by the to appease the censors.
Mm-hmm. They all leave right before Lois wakes up and comes to try to get Murphy to a hospital. They do rush him in, but they can't do anything, and we get dying flashbacks of his wife and kid before his vision goes all black.
Wait a moment. Something about this scene reminds me of another thing that happened in a video game years later. Some sort of Deus Ex Human Revolution.
Yeah,
maybe.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And we get the first person of him dying and all of his vision going blank until it's not. And we get to see some sort of lab with various doohickeys and thingies being installed onto him.
And a little bit of change in the camera fidelity here with a little bit of a sort of staticky sort of vibe.
Mm-hmm. Morden comes in and discusses very callously how much of their body they're going to keep or replace. And none of it matters because the guy was dead and he signed a release form. So, the company owns him now.
This is our flesh to do with as we wish. Make it a robot.
So after this montage of electronics and office parties, etc., all from this first-person point of view of whatever this is, we get introduced to Robocop, the law enforcement of the future.
Dun 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 dun.
So OCP rolls up to the police department with electronics and scientists, and they take over a holding cell with makeshift lab equipment. Morton tells all the officers to get lost because this is OCP business and they don't matter. And then they're all distracted by the very large metal man who loudly stomps his way through the hallway.
Yeah, so, well, I guess that's our new co-worker. Possibly our replacement. Hello.
So we get a couple of key pieces of information. Robocop has a tracker that they can use to know his exact location. I love these old props that are very, very clearly a stationary light bulb and a plastic map.
Yep. Yeah, that's what you got to do at the time.
Also, less importantly, we learn that he eats baby food to keep his organic systems alive.
You can't have anything that's too chunky, I guess.
He's also able to record anything that he hears with an inbuilt video recorder thingy. And he also has a set of prime directives to serve the public trust, protect the innocent, uphold the law, and classified.
Well, if these are your prime directives, I guess that fourth one doesn't become relevant until we have, a federation of planets to worry about.
So they take Robocop to get some gun range time to test his giant rapid-fire pistol. This is where Lois sees him do the gun trick that Murphy used to do when he holsters his weapon into his leg.
Wait a moment. I recognize that gun flip and possibly that jawline.
Oh, heads out on patrol. We get a bit of a montage. He stops a convenience store robbery by throwing a guy through a freezer door. We get the very famous and criticized scene where he saves a woman from being assaulted by shooting through her dress to the guy behind her.
It kind of looks like he's just going to shoot her, even though you get what sort of trope you're going with here, because the angle just looks like he's going to shoot her.
Yeah, the angle doesn't look like it should work out, but,
Yeah. She's not that short compared to this guy.
This is also where we see that he is now completely callous and unemotional because he doesn't even react to the woman who runs up and tries to thank him for saving her.
Which I suppose might be an improvement over normal law enforcement.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Then moves on to a hostage negotiation where the ex-mayor has taken over the office and is holding the new mayor hostage because he didn't get reelected. Something that could never happen in our America.
Yeah. Make sure to vote, folks, and, try not to let this happen again.
The Robocop just walks in, very annoying the police negotiator who's outside.
Keep him talking. Okay. So what do you want? Hopefully this works.
Robocop uses infrared vision to see the ex-mayor and grab him through the wall and then throw him out a window, which seemed a little unnecessary.
Yeah. Though I guess I should note the heat effects there. They didn't actually get a heat camera or anything like that. They did sort of composite imagery where they got some, took the actors, stripped them down, and covered them in a sort of a reactive, light reactive paint, and then film them like that. Just standing in the room.
Yeah, it's just a fun old effect where they painted the heat effects onto the actors.
Yes.
And that's why it's probably only on screen for less than a second, because they don't want you looking at it too close.
Yes.
So Robocop is, as far as the news is concerned, a complete success. This has jumped Morton's career up to be vice president in the company, and he's having a grand old time.
He gets the executive washroom key now.
Then he very dumbly starts bad-mouthing Jones when he thinks he's alone with all of his new business friends in the bathroom, but it turns out that Jones was in the stall and everyone runs away.
Yeah, so that was awkward.
Jones lets Morton know just how big of a mistake he's made by going over his head. Morton is very cocky for a guy who is being, physically assaulted by a guy who is clearly unhinged.
Yes. So Dick Jones is bigger than you. He's more sociopathic than you. And, he's a little bit more experienced being the corporate shark here than you. You maybe want to, watch your back, maybe?
Says that Morton made an ungodly abomination and he better pray nothing goes wrong. We cut to something going wrong.
Oh no.
Now, Robocop is in his diagnostic chair thingy when he starts to have flashes of Murphy's murder. His vitals go wild. He then stands up without being put online and just leaves.
Well, that's awkward. Should we follow him?
They try. He runs into Lewis, who calls him Murphy. He isn't ready to hear it and just goes out on patrol again.
No, I guess, instead of, freaking out and killing everyone at the police station, this is an alternative?
They call in Morton, and he's like, why would you shut this down? This is dumb. This is my entire career. I don't care if this murder machine we made is malfunctioning.
Just make sure it doesn't malfunction too badly, and, whatever.
So one of the gangsters who killed Murphy is robbing a gas station. Robocop shows up, gives him the dead or alive line, which makes the guy recognize him, and throws Robocop into a series of weird flashbacks that make him freeze up for a bit, which almost lets the guy get away by blowing up the gas station, but then Robocop shoots the motorcycle out from under him anyway.
And poor Emil's, gets a little beat up, but I guess he gets taken off to prison for the time being. But he'll get better.
So now Robocop's just got a bunch of weird memories that have forced his way into his head. So he runs into the computer records room of the police department and logs in with a literal computer spike he's got in his hand.
Which establishes that he has a computer spike in his hand.
It's also this odd computer interface thing that a lot of sci-fi from this era seems to think will just have some sort of big plug that you shove into a miscellaneous computer hole.
Yeah, so it's basically the R2-D2 little spinny doohickey that he puts into the computer several times on the Death Star there.
Yeah.
Except more intimidating and stabby.
Yeah, more pointy.
Yes.
So he uses a video that he took of the gangster guy to find the records of his accomplices, where he finds Boddicker, and from Boddicker he finds Murphy. And from Murphy he finds Murphy's address.
This is important information. I must note it down.
So Robocop heads to Murphy's old house, which is on the market with televised automated sales guys. He has flashback of Murphy's family as he walks through the house. Eventually, he blows up the annoying sales bot.
Yeah, as you do.
Leaves.
I do like that the house seems mostly cleaned up, but there's a few areas that just we just didn't care.
Leave
a few things
I know, it's
here.
it's very realistic for this kind of house sales.
Mm-hmm. We want to leave soon.
Oh, Morton's having a great time now because Robocop's a success. He's a vice president. He's doing a lot of 80s executive things with women in a fancy house and a lot of drugs.
I believe the technical term is hookers and blow.
Then Boddicker shows up and the women run off. Morton's shot in the leg. Boddicker puts the DVD in the TV, and it's a recording of Jones explaining that Morton fucked up. So,
this is my little revenge here, and don't try to get out of it. Clarence Boddicker, you're a good guy, but Bob, I'm gonna fire you, I think.
Basically, we could have been friends, but you went over my head, so Boddicker, have a grenade.
Mm-hmm.
And then the place explodes.
And I guess the DVD self-melts just in case, maybe, just so there's no evidence.
Yeah, lots of exploding, though. So he probably figured that takes care of it.
Yeah, hopefully.
Sometime later, Boddicker has some drug deals to make. He negotiates with another gangster guy. Apparently, Boddicker's just in charge of everything because he's able to intimidate his way through this negotiation pretty easily.
And the manufacturer sort of fellow is like, no one pushes me around, but I guess you can, kind of.
Then something starts kicking down the doors as Robocop's broken his way into the factory.
We're going to have a little bit of a shootout, but before we get to that, I want to point out that while they were filming this scene, they discovered that the guns weren't working properly. So they had a lot more of ideas for lengthy shootouts back and forth, all that sort of stuff. But they given the guns kept jamming and failing and various things like that, it's well, I guess we can film 3 seconds at a time.
Fun.
Yeah.
Which, it does give you some good impact, because this is just they shoot at Robocop for a bit, nothing happens, and then they run.
And, he blasts some guys away, and there's some back and forth, quick edits, all this sort of stuff, and action movie stuff happens.
But Robocop is very single-minded here because he's here for Boddicker. Boddicker yells about how he works for Dick Jones and he's under his protection and don't you care. You're owned by OCP. But Robocop just really wants to kill him, but his programming kicks him and he has to arrest him instead because the whole uphold the law thing.
It's like, oh yeah, I'm a cop. Thanks for reminding me. I guess I'll just throw you through this window here, I guess.
Robocop brings Boddicker into the station where they're having a bit of a thing about how they're going to go on strike because OCP's badly running the police department.
Well, obviously, but hey, we found the guy that's been doing all the terrible crimes here.
Yeah. So Robocop immediately heads off to the OCP corporate tower because now he's got a recording saying that it's all Jones's fault.
Robocop, maybe you should, back up your memory core there just in case something happens on the way there.
No, don't be silly. He's cop. He's super cop. So he
feature Jackie Chan.
So he walks right into Jones's office, who's expecting him, which is never a good sign. Robocop intends to arrest him for being a felon, but he can't because Directive 4 is that any attempt to arrest or harm a senior OCP official results in shutdown.
Well, I guess I'm shutting down.
So Jones kills Morton, and now it's time to fix this little mistake of his. He calls in Ed 209 to shoot Robocop back out of the office.
Wait, Dick, you actually trust this thing to be in your office?
Apparently.
Are you nuts? Huh.
There's missiles. There's this interesting thing that I'm surprised how dynamic they're able to make any of these scenes look, because there's a incredibly slow-moving missile aimed at an incredibly slow-moving man.
Yep. Oh no, how do I dodge this? I can't move fast enough. Well, it goes half a meter a second.
The Robocop's finally able to grab one of Ed 209's gun hands and use it to blow up the other gun hand, and then he runs down some stairs, which is their one weakness.
Ed 209 has the same weakness as the Daleks.
So he runs outside, where cops have surrounded the office with their orders to destroy Robocop.
This is awkward.
He's able to escape into the parking garage, where Lois finds him and rescues him, and they all drive away while the cops are still shooting at them all.
Yes, that's a police cruiser. You're shooting at a police cruiser, and it's one of it's Lewis's. Come on, guys.
Boddicker gets let out of jail because OCP lawyers, and he heads to Jones's office through all of the rubble of the fight, and etc. He's creepy and mean to the secretary, which I just thought was kind of fun because the secretary was being played by his wife.
Yep. It's like, can I be creepy at you for this role here? Sure.
Jones wants Boddicker to kill Robocop because he was stupid and let him get a recording of him talking about how he's implicated in shit.
Oh, go fix your dent here. Come on.
I'll have a nice little exchange of, well, why should I do anything for you? It's like, well, I guess you don't want to sell drugs to the million construction workers that are about to be pouring into the city.
So, your financial windfall here could go very well for you if you solve this problem.
And now he's going to give him, military stuff.
Basically some anti-tank rifles, effectively.
So Lois takes Robocop back to the abandoned steel mill to repair himself. It's unclear if this is the same steel mill or a different similar steel mill.
Yeah, I think it's the same one, but yeah.
I mean, it's definitely the same one that they're shooting at. I can't quite tell whether it's supposed to be literally the same one or not.
Well, this is, post-industrial Detroit, so maybe there is only the one steel mill. It's just really big.
Yeah. So he uses a drill thingy to take off his helmet, where we get to see 6-inch screws come out of his head.
I'm suddenly reminded of Scorpius from Farscape. It's like, how do you fit those in there?
And then we can see that Murphy's face has been sort of grafted over this mechanical body.
Yeah, it's like, well, I guess they needed the face in order to make him personable. But dang, this is kind of a frightening look.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice. He asks about Murphy's wife and kids, who apparently moved away after he died, because he was dead.
Might as well.
He has a thing about being able to feel them but not remember them.
Sort of vibes at this point.
Boddicker then finds this gang having fun because the cops are on strike. You know? So it seems like the streets are basically the same level of crime-ridden as they were before.
Yeah, so I guess maybe we could just not have these cops, and things will be just as bad, and maybe the criminals will finish their looting and get bored. I don't know.
So he hands out Cobra assault cannons, which are large rifles that shoot explosives.
So basically what you need to take down a robot that is also a cop.
And he also has one of Robocop's trackers.
Uh-oh.
They do some gang-related shenanigans, which is mostly an excuse to have explosions.
It's like, I've stolen a car. You exploded my car. Ow.
There's also one explosion that was way bigger than they expected, and you can see all the actors running.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe at least one of them got extra pay for being technically part of a stunt. Because
all
they
of them
so
got
close
extra pay for being part of a stunt that was an unanticipated stunt.
Well, this guy specifically was like, later is like, yeah, I totally intended that to get extra pay. Totally. Not really.
So Lois helps Robo finish up his repairs and targeting system just as the gang shows up. She refuses to leave, so he sends her off to get the car for later. He has a very slow shootout with the gang.
Yes.
It is a complete miracle that they don't hit him with these things.
Yes. Well, they might just be bad shots, which is also maybe why they keep losing members of their gang.
Yeah. He shoots one. Another guy drives into a vat of toxic waste, which starts to melt him. And then later when Boddicker starts leaving in his car, he runs into the guy and he just explodes all over it, which makes him crash because he can't see through the exploded guts. Yeah,
so it's very gooey. Apparently that's what toxic waste does to you instantly.
One of the other gang people drops steel bars on Robocop so that, Boddicker can just waltz up and try to shoot him. But Lewis, who's been shot and falls down into this water pit they're all fighting in, is able to crawl to one of the big guns that they left hanging around and shoots the crane guy.
Huzzah! Crane guy is complete. Just Clarence left at this point, I think, right?
Yep. So Boddicker tries to kill Robocop with a big spike, but he gets grabbed instead. Then he surrenders and goes, no, you have to arrest me, you're programming. He goes, no, I'm not arresting you today. And he stabs him in the neck with his big robot spike thing.
So Spike versus Spike, Robocop wins.
So Boddicker's dead. Robocop is able to get up and leave. Lois goes, no, go, I'll be fine.
Yeah, and we'll have a deleted scene where it's clear that I managed to get out of the situation A-okay, but, we don't have it in the film, so don't worry about it.
And she's in the sequels. It's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, the OCP executives are having a big meeting about how great the police strike is because they can roll out all of their Ed 209s to fill the gap and get immediate public support.
Yeah, just hopefully they don't gun down everyone that we're trying to get the support of.
Yeah. Even if they do, it doesn't matter.
No. We'll just pretend it didn't happen.
Jones, in fact, has one downstairs right now guarding the building that totally doesn't immediately get blown up by Robocop with one of his Cobra cannons.
Yes. Yeah, it's like, all right, so Ed 209 might not be very good at identifying what's not a threat, but it's also very slow at identifying what is an imminent threat.
Yeah.
Because it's like, surrender, you have 20 seconds, and Robocop's like, I'm just going to shoot you.
Because he just doesn't even drop your weapon. He's like, you are parked illegally.
Yes.
Robocop then busts his way into the boardroom, which the old man is very weirdly okay with.
Well, maybe he suspects that something like this is going to happen at some point.
It's like, can we help you, random officer in metal who just barged into our meeting? Obviously, this has been blown up a little bit.
Yeah. Cup of coffee, a newspaper. What's up?
So he accuses Dick Jones of murder and puts his admission to killing Bob Morton on all the TV screens.
All right. Well, that's awkward. Dick, you're not supposed to murder the other executives. Only random people in the streets or people that, are accidentally killed, like that one other guy.
He tells everybody that he can't do anything because of his, Directive 4, can't arrest OCP personnel shit. Jones then grabs the old man, holds a gun to his head for some reason, since Robocop can't do anything.
Well, maybe he's panicking at this point, and also the other OC people can be like, yeah, we can like apprehend you ourselves technically because we might not be cops, but we do own the police. So yeah.
Then the old man fires him, which lets Robocop shoot him out of a window.
And Dick Jones finds himself full of a bullet and enjoying some gravity.
Then the old man asks Robocop's name, and he turns around and says, Murphy.
The end.
And then they decided that was too good of a line, and they ended the movie instead of showing the things where Lois is okay and everything's fine now.
Yes, so we're going for the emotional punch here, sort of. And that was Robocop.
Ah, that was Robocop, 1987.
Mm-hmm.
Not 2014 or any of the bad ones.
Not Robocop 2, not Robocop 3, not Robocop the series, not Robocop we're not going to talk about in the
Robocop the cartoon, Robocop the TV show, Robocop the video game, Robocop versus Terminator the video game.
Or any of the comic adaptations, including other Robocop versus things.
Robocop versus the Predator, Robocop versus Alien, Robocop versus Judge Dredd. I'm not sure if they made that one, but they almost certainly did.
If they haven't, then they should probably get around to doing it at some point. Like Robocop wakes up like in a storage locker and it's like, I guess I have to go uphold the law now, and finds that it's dystopian future, and what he knows is the law is now different because it's dystopian future and stuff. Anyway, what do you think?
I hadn't seen it in a while. I had forgotten how well this movie holds up.
Yeah, I hadn't seen the entirety of it since I was like a kid. So yeah, it's like I've seen bits and pieces of it, off and on, over time, but to actually get it all together for once is kind of nice. And yeah, it's a pretty solid film. It's
also interesting how well it aged.
It's like, wow, some of the stuff is still going on or getting worse or now happening.
Yeah.
Great.
The effects have held up remarkably well because it's all miniature work and costumes.
Yeah.
And even of any problematic elements that it has, which are, we'll get into the police stuff because that's a large part of everything. But one of the only main criticisms that I ever even see of this movie is how they just use the casual rape scene as a way to just reinforce how bad everything is. Which, not great, but as far as sexism in the mid-'80s.
That's better than the average.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do appreciate that they basically tried to drain out the sexual aspects generally from the good guys, I suppose, because the only folks that are looking to get some are various types of bad guys here. The gangsters there and Bob Morton, who is quote the better unquote executive there, but he's still a monster. While Murphy and Lewis are like, yeah, we're partners. There's no sexual chemistry here at all, and we're going to keep it that way. And there's a wife who's now out of the picture, and so there's it's like we're trying to get stuff done here versus we're exploiting the city and the people in it for our own pleasure sort of characters on the other side.
Yeah, so Verhoeven asked them to write a third version of the script that had a romantic subplot between Murphy and Lois, and then he read it and apologized.
Good. It's like, yeah, this doesn't work at all. Let's go back to the other one.
I think that what I find most interesting with this, especially reading so many takes on what this movie is about from people who seem to be like sort of backdating more recent sort of robot and cyborg narratives onto Robocop as a film, is how much it actually doesn't do with the sci-fi aspects of the story. There's a lot of talk about how this is a story of someone who is like taken away from their humanity and put into a metal shell and has to re-find their humanity and what makes a human, etc., etc., etc. That is not in here. Yeah,
we're not really exploring that. Yeah, there has been something that's been taken away, but for Robocop, it's sort of like a reset that, he is recovering the things that he lost, but he didn't really realize that he had lost them in the first place.
Well, sort of. Like, the entire thing is weirdly respectful of Murphy and his general humanity the entire way through. Like, he is a person before, he is a person after. The only thing he needs to do is reassert himself as a person. There's no big debate over how much of him has been lost, and is he still human if he's just a brain in a jar, etc., etc.
Indeed. It's like there's a lot of new pieces to him, but it's still him.
Which is mostly because the satire in this movie is made so effectively that you can so easily see that this is not, in fact, a story about cyborgs or humanity or what the ever-increasing mix of humans and machines means in our greater world and landscape and whether we lose our humanity, etc., etc. This is using cyborg integration as a metaphor for corporate control.
Yep. You have used directives here, and one of them is very specifically dealing with the corporation basically being able to run roughshod over you. So congratulations, you are now our puppet.
Yeah, so the more he's a puppet of the corporate system and sort of the state system, which has been replaced by the corporate system in this context, which is a thing that the 80s were very afraid of. Mm-hmm. The more he has that, the more robot-y and cybernetic he is. Then near at the end, when he takes off his mask and reasserts his own individual identity, that's, the climax. That's our heroic finalization of him as a character, is he has reasserted his humanity outside of the control of the corporation that spawned him.
Indeed. His directives are still there, but he's now being able to I guess, push himself outside of that control. He could, technically have been, restrained by Broderick there at the end to not kill him. But, it's like, all right, I'm going to kind of just ignore that directive because you are just too dangerous here and I'm kind of tired of you.
Well, not even
spike the head.
The thing that I find very interesting about that scene is I think that is sort of the crux of this movie and its unavoidable discussion that it has to have with propaganda and police whitewashing. Because you could read that scene in a couple of very interesting ways. I think the movie very cleverly avoids a sort of bad, Dirty Harry style reading. Because you have Boddicker, the evil gang member, who gets arrested originally. He is going to be killed by the cop. He says, no, you're a cop. You have certain rules on what you're allowed to do to me. He gets brought in. He's back out immediately because of lawyers and interference, etc., etc. And then later has to be killed by the good guy because it's just the only way to deal with him. That is a very sort of Dirty Harry-esque reading that you could put on this as a cop movie.
Yes.
The cop has to go outside of his own legal restrictions in order to do what actually needs to be done to keep the streets safe for people. But I think that what they do very cleverly in this is they make it so personal that it's really, for better or worse, a reassertion of Murphy's autonomy as a individual human outside of the control of the state.
Indeed.
Because we have the police as this sort of veneer of the state control of violence, the state doling out violence in its proper measure with proper controls and the best way to do the thing, which is supposed to replace interpersonal violence like revenge, which is what is happening when Murphy reasserts himself and overcomes the corporate programming to take revenge on the person who originally tortured him to death.
Indeed.
Now, you may not agree with that motivation and that being a right thing to do, but that's what makes him a complicated human character instead of just a tool of sponsored state violence that's supposedly cleaned up and doing the right thing. It's a very interesting dynamic that they've set up in the interpersonal violence being replaced by this supposedly okay state violence, but how that's actually taking away his agency as a full, complete human.
I do. I'd agree. I guess that was kind of where I was trying to go to with my comment there. This is very much, him sort of putting aside that, layers of control there and taking over the situation for himself.
There's something else that was kind of interesting that I had this recommended to me by someone. I hadn't fully heard of this. Are you familiar with the 1985 essay, which would have been, 2 years before this, around the same time this is being written, which is one of the things that makes it fascinating, called A Cyborg Manifesto? I
think I've heard of it, but I've not read it myself. What's it about?
It is very difficult to say what the hell it's about. It is a intentionally sort of semi-satirical, very glib sort of piece by Donna J. Haraway, who's a self-described socialist feminist from the mid-'80s. And this was, I think, very accurately described in one of the things I was reading about it as a socialist feminist fever dream. It is a attempt to create like an ironic socialist structure for a fictional cyborg character that can fit within the 80s understanding of socialist feminism.
Sort of a thought experiment.
The line that I picked out that I think best describes its intersection with this film is the main trouble with cyborgs, of course, is that they are illegitimate offspring of militarism and patriarchal capitalism, not to mention state socialism. But illegitimate offspring are often exceedingly unfaithful to their origins. Their fathers are, after all, incestual.
So how do you break out of this, hostile point of origin here and, enter into a more equitable existence?
Yeah, it's an interesting take on how you can look at a cyborg, the fictional sci-fi idea of a cyborg, this melding of organic and machinery, as breaking down a lot of the artificial barriers that patriarchal thinking has put in place under our current, patriarchal capitalist nationalism militarist structure. Because there isn't as much of a breakdown between, human and animal and machine, or any of the other dichotomies that we've set up. And this fundamental breaking down of those things makes the cyborg alone and separate from a lot of stuff that otherwise gives you control over the individual.
Indeed. You can be more physically capable in a number of ways. You can be vulnerable in a number of ways. You can, have the ability to eat endless streams of baby food, but you'll never enjoy any of it or normal food ever again. And it's all sorts of trade-offs. And you got this sort of thing where it's like, all right, so what I need, what I want, what I'm going to be doing in this world is now, it's almost liberating in that I have a new set of limitations, but they're not necessarily going to be compatible with these established, institutions and, ways of doing things here. So I can kind of start over in a fashion.
I think that the interesting, look at Robocop through this sort of feminist socialist lens, which is not a place you would normally go to with this sort of, 80s boys action movie, is sort of this unfaithfulness to their origins line. It is, as one of the people that was going through this essay described it, the can you destroy the master's house with the master's tools?
Oh, yeah. Well, in a technical sense, yes. If you have an army of cyborgs that decide that they don't want your state anymore, they can conceivably turn on you, and it's only your programming can only control them so far before their meat brains kind of override that and come and it's like, we don't want to be your puppets anymore.
I also think it's really interesting how much RoboCop has in common with the, cyberpunk genre, which was in sort of the new wave, 60s, 70s sci-fi stuff, but was sort of
recently coming into its
more
thing,
it was like, as far as like cyberpunk a genre, it was kind of in like, the late 70s, mid 80s era, which is the same thing that you have with Robocop. But this is very, I don't know if you would call Robocop exactly cyberpunk, because it's missing a lot of the general tropes that you get later on, but it definitely has a lot of core similarities. Because one of the best descriptions I saw for cyberpunk as a genre was from the YouTuber Negative Legend. They do mostly like reviews of children's cartoons and dolls, which is a very interesting place for them to come at cyberpunk from.
We're going from dolls to just the cyborgs. Okay, got it.
They had this very good line that cyberpunk is sort of a interesting and scary science fiction genre because it is science fiction without an inciting incident. Nothing happened. This is the future as it will happen if we don't change anything now.
The slow decay, the half-life has been achieved. The processes already in motion have reached their logical conclusion, and that conclusion is terrible.
Yes, it's all, corporate control and automated systems of the same bad stuff we have now.
It's the Internet of shit has taken over. Great.
Yeah. Which Robocop doesn't explicitly bring in some of that, but it very much has a lot of parallels in the overarching corporate control and the transhumanist body modification, even though that's apparently much more in its infancy in the Robocop world, being Robocop is like the premier cyborg.
Yes. It's sort of this is cyberpunk way via this is just when everyone's realizing, oh, we might live in cyberpunk future now.
Yeah. I think the real key to analyzing Robocop as a satirical science fiction film is really to drill into the relationship that Robocop has with the corporate entity, because that's one of the other key hallmarks of the cyberpunk genre is, yes, at the end of the film, he's taken out the bad guy. Things are measurably better than they were because he got rid of the corporate entity that was funding all of the gangs and trying to tear down the police force for its own ends. But nothing got that much better. The actual core problems are not solved. OCP still runs the police. They still own Detroit. They are still in charge of everything.
Yeah, Delta City might still be on the horizon. It's just going to be through a different avenue. There is still, nukes being talked about in, Africa. There is a space laser that's now apparently killed 2 former presidents in a weird targeting sort of mishap. Huh. All these things are still happening, but these couple guys, they've been taken care of.
Yeah. It's very personal. There's very personal problems that are being dealt with in a personal way. And you as an individual can have little to no impact on the larger socioeconomic problems of your world. You just don't have that kind of power.
Which I guess, cycling back a little bit, this sort of, when Robocop's overriding his priorities there, it's like I might not have much power in the larger world here, but I could still do this. I could still make this choice to make, things just slightly better for me and those people I know. And still there's this larger corporate control situation that he's unable to tackle, but one thing at a time.
Yeah, I think what really drilled in for me as I was reading all of these takes of, Robocop rediscovering and retaking his humanity is, I think that that's such a fundamental misreading of the way that you have the corporate structure interacting with Robocop as a character. Because they never did anything to take away his humanity, because as far as the corporation is concerned, he wasn't human to begin with.
Indeed. Like, even when he was on, just a, Officer Murphy, he is a resource to be expended.
Yeah, they purposely moved him into a high-risk position because he was a good potential candidate to be used for this project, and they needed him to get killed in order to do it.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't think of him as a human in the first place. They didn't do anything to curtail his humanity particularly. So they didn't have the amount of control over him that they thought they did, because they, as a corporate entity, cannot see people as something other than just a resource to be exploited and controlled. So when he takes the power that they give him and turns it against them, they don't really have a lot of checks in place to prevent that from happening, because they didn't think it could happen.
Yep. We thought we just programmed you, it'd be good to go. Just like we expected Ed 209 to stop shooting when it did, when the thing happened that should have caused it to not shoot.
Yeah, even up to the point of Jones putting the one piece of control that he puts into the program, the "you cannot harm me," as an OCP executive. He puts it in as "you cannot harm OCP," not "you cannot harm me."
Yes. Which I guess, that's maybe the easy way to sort of get it, that, he's like, this is my contribution to the program. And, he probably brought it up and everyone's like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea from all the other executives there. It's like, yeah, this sort of thing, if you phrase it like that, you don't have to be sneaky about it. And you now have a cover just in case you happen to be, the main sugar daddy for a criminal enterprise there,
Which I think is one of there's two places where I think Robocop fundamentally separates itself from what we would classically think of as propaganda media. And one is that where Jones is only protected as long as he is a part of the overarching control structure.
Indeed.
He puts protections in place for the system, but the system does not care about him as an individual. And as soon as he is no longer useful to the system, they throw him out.
In this case,
out of a window.
Metaphorically, legally, and very literally.
So it's showing in that no matter how powerful you are inside of the system, you are still not necessary to the system, and you will be discarded as soon as you are no longer useful to it.
Indeed.
The other part that I think is really important is when Robocop goes to confront OCP originally and gets taken out by Ed 209 and then escapes, the entire police force is there to take him out.
Yes. Because
they were told that he is the bad guy now. Mm-hmm. So as much as he is still fundamentally linked with the police throughout the entire thing, he's like even called a cop by the end of the movie. But at that point, he ceases to be linked with the police, because the minute he's no longer useful, every single member of the police department turns against him because they were ordered to.
Yeah, the cops here are not, trying to be upholders of justice. They're following orders, and those orders are against our hero now. So
the thing even doesn't say that Robocop is continuing to try to uphold justice by the end. Mm-hmm. He doesn't identify himself as a police officer by the end of the film. He is Murphy. He killed a guy because he was taking revenge on the guy that hurt him, and then he went to kill the other guy to continue to take revenge on the guy that hurt him.
So I guess there might be a weird snarling of the logic there. It's like, serve the public trust versus uphold the law. Serve the public trust, uphold the law. Maybe I'm just going to do that first one and the other one be damned.
Well, at this point, he can obviously just overrule whatever logic blocks were keeping him from being able to just kill Boddicker in the first place. Yes. Which is why we have to have that scene originally to show that he at one point is curtailed by the programming. And then later, the more self-actualized he becomes in his own identity, the less and less the programming can control him.
Yes. And so we got Robocop, who's now an autonomous individual who is now existing as a person, and the OCP needs to better watch out.
Which kind of is an interesting take as far as the police aspect of the thing is, because it's not one good individual upholding the law in a corrupt system, or even the cops are doing a good thing when left alone to their own devices. It is just the story of one person who is fundamentally imperfect and takes bloody revenge on the people who hurt him.
Mm-hmm. So yeah. So Murphy, you are a flawed individual, but you are a person. Congratulations.
Yeah, the fact that that falls into our modern police narrative is actually just another clever bit of subversion that they're doing. And I see why it can be folded into propaganda. Like, there's definitely a pro-police reading of this film that it doesn't do a lot to dissuade you from.
Yes.
But I don't think that is actually the intention that they're going for.
Yeah, I guess to a certain degree, the cop sort of usage here, that the police usage is more as a prop as opposed to an entity in its own right, because it has been subverted, even before the story begins, by this, external power, and as we see throughout the film, it is being, used by that external power for its own, specific uses, both in terms of getting ready for Delta City, hunting down Robocop, and the rest there. And so it's like, yeah, this is, the police are a tool, and they're being used against, whatever happens to be against OCP.
Well, I think one of the core things that they have in that, even though it's shown to be like supposedly the work of one individual executive, OCP owns the police, but they also own the criminals.
Yep. It's like, why not, the arms dealers love wars. They can sell weapons to both sides, but what if you are both sides, huh?
Even the militarizing of the police force that, Jones is pushing for with his Ed 209 program, he even says at one point, who cares if the things work? We have contracts, we can sell replacement parts. Who cares if a few people die as long as we can sell products?
For the next 20 years, this will be setting me up for, life, retirement, all that. This is great. So why don't you care about this, Bob? Come on. Get with the program. So yeah, OCP, it kind of sucks.
Yes.
So I guess one of the other things that I've sort of thought about when I was watching this is, we've covered a lot of the core meat here, but I guess the aesthetics of this world that we're living in here, it's very similar in some ways to ours, but there's also some future of the 80s stuff going on along with that I rather like. And so that's it's maybe just kind of a small point I want to make here, that I do kind of miss that sort of thing happening that isn't the future of, the present as in our present now. But, I'd like to see more future of the 80s sort of films made now.
Which they do a little bit. You definitely have a revival of the cassette punk aesthetic.
Yeah, tape deck punk.
I was kind of thinking about that earlier because I saw this really good breakdown on why modern Star Trek looks kind of different and weird as opposed to older, like 80s, 90s Star Trek. And it's there's a really interesting visual thing in why hasn't Star Trek The Next Generation aged as badly as it should have. Because it's definitely 80s technology.
Yes.
Like, everything's chunky and weird looking and not particularly futuristic. And I think that fundamentally is why stuff like that and stuff like Robocop and other things like, Aliens and things in that future 80s genre actually have not aged as badly as it seems like they should. Because even with the Z-Rust, I have an iPad that is more powerful than most of what they say the Enterprise computers can do.
Yes.
Everything thematically fits together in a way that looks like it works coherently and makes sense for what they're doing. Like,
Indeed.
yeah, their mobile little reading pad thing is twice as thick as what we can do now with a mobile reading pad thing, but that doesn't matter because everything looks like that. This is a very coherent world, and it all makes sense together, so it doesn't really look as weird as something that's a less coherent near future thing, where it's like, here's my amazing mobile wrist computer that's, 20 pounds.
Yes. I guess, maybe then has me then thinking about the Fallout. Have you been seeing the new series there at all?
Yeah, but like Fallout's
it's like taking this to an extreme in a way.
It's one of the original ones that did this as a weird throwback thing because it's so specifically what if the future that they said we would have in the 50s.
And so they sort of set things up with a lot of materials that seem, very kind of, Z-rusty intentionally, but they all are present simultaneously along with stuff that, it's a little bit more, I guess, modern feeling at times, but not to such an extreme that it's like distracting, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's another one that because they've created such a cohesive level of technology that all works together. Also, that one is very easily playing off of our ideas of the future. Because since science fiction and future thinking was basically created in the 40s and 50s, anything from that era of the 50s future is never going to look particularly out of place as long as you don't put it next to one of our weird, sleek J.J. Abrams style things that we do now.
Yes. So, the zap gun from the 50s next to your 80s tricorder, next to the new comm badges from the later seasons of Discovery. These are all very different text, different vibes, very different sort of purposes, and they would just kind of clash if you put them all in the same place here without having a very good reason for that. Which sometimes sci-fi comes up with good reasons for that. Holodecks, for instance, are an area that gets explored sometimes in Star Trek on that front. But most of the time, it just sort of takes you out of the fiction, and that can be very distracting and disappointing. So I guess in terms of writers, creators, and things like that out there, sometimes it is fun to have that killer, cool idea that you totally want to include in a thing of fiction, but always make sure it fits properly. Otherwise, it will become very dated because this one thing is just such a product of the time that you created it, and it clashes so well with everything else around it that it might have been acceptable in that moment, but later you're going to look back and it's like, wow, that's just disappointing.
You have to have a fundamental understanding of what you're trying to do with the technology as far as storytelling, because none of the stuff in the Fallout universe works. We can definitely see that the lore, the like explanations that they give for their level of technology are undoable. You cannot make a Pip-Boy with all of the wrist computery stuff that it does without having some level of miniaturization technology, even if you never did invent the transistor. You just can't fit a CRTV and all of the other stuff it's supposed to have in there into something that size with the level of non-miniaturization that they are supposedly working with.
Indeed.
It doesn't matter because you are in the future of the 1950s. And in the 1950s, a computer was magic.
Yes, so you can treat this as magic.
Now, if you're going into something more modern, where you're saying this is an this is a something that's coming out of our modern level of technology that everybody thinks they understand, even though they don't really, you have to come up with a much more justifiable reason that the stuff can work like that, or people are going to complain at you.
So being a little bit more nitpicky about the details here and now is it's much more in vogue and it actually kind of makes sense because
which is another thing that just works well in something like Fallout because it thematically fits with everything else they're doing. Not only is it a 50s level of a technology, it's a 50s level of trusting the government. It's a 50s level of social interaction. It's a 50s level of everything.
Yep.
So, like, of course none of the stuff works the way that it's supposed to because no one told you the truth about what was happening.
And that's some of the plot lines.
It all thematically works to sell the same story.
Yeah.
The same way that, like, you're talking about all of this, like, near future 80s tech doesn't really look as bad because if you look at something like Aliens, if you look at the Nostromo, like, that looks a lot like military technology now. It makes sense that a spaceship would be big and chunky and not really look that futuristic because it's utilitarian.
Yeah, you don't have the sleek lines there because you don't need them.
The same way that 90s era Star Trek with its, next gen carpeting and stuff doesn't look particularly out of place because it's going for that very corporate boardroom aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're working with something aesthetically, it doesn't matter whether it looks like the technology functions because the aesthetic fits.
I guess, another sort of thing on this front with Robocop specifically then is the computer science side of things. That, we have several times sort of boot screens, things like that for Murphy here that, read out various things that are being loaded. And folks of the time would have no idea what like a bootloader is, for instance. Because it's definitely before the time that every third person I seem to run into is a computer scientist of some sort. So there's but having these sort of things here that are maybe much more well known in terms of the science of what's actually going would go into a computer system to help run a cyborg, is maybe a little bit more something that people could potentially know about in the here and now. Still, casting it through this sort of 80s lens still sort of, I guess, takes away the hardness, makes it fall back into more mystique again, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anybody's gone through half of the computer shit in there, but like making it like the joke for the 3 people who will get it is always a thing that filmmakers have done.
Yeah. Command.com, load BIOS, BIOS system check, RAM check, config.sys, bio.com interface, to room IO controller, comspec, exe, memory.dat, robo utils, system buffer, parameters, parity set, memory set, system status, and OK. So, yeah.
I think it's kind of interesting, too, because as much as we talk about technology and movies and near future stuff aging badly, I think that it's kind of interesting to look at it in the context in which it is presented, because our consumer level stuff has moved to be like sleeker and more user friendly so much faster than anything you would see in this sort of institutional setting. Because of course, the way that he interfaces with the police records database looks really slow and clunky, and probably doesn't work like that now, but it certainly doesn't seem that much worse than the user interface that I had when I worked at GameStop.
How invasive was it? Did you need to get a blood test?
You had to physically type in everything that you wanted to do. It didn't have a GUI.
It's slash no delete CD slash
Yeah, it was one level up from having to switch user, etc.
Sudo, do the thing, please. Let me not get out of here. I need to ring this guy up. So there's maybe one other thing I wanted to touch upon briefly here. What do you think about walking on water?
Yeah, they certainly do some recognizable stuff.
Yes.
Snyder-esque, you could say.
Yeah, in sort of a quick, popcorn flick sort of viewing here, you can definitely sort of have the vibe that's like, oh yeah, this is just an action movie and cyborgs are cool and let's fight the system, man. sort of stuff going on here. But there's a lot of Messiah-esque sort of imagery and vibes going on here, because we literally have Murphy dying for the sins of OCP, and in a larger sense, the greed culture that has made it possible to get to this point. And then he comes back to life. He's able to walk on water in that one scene, and he's doing what he can to do good here to save the city of Detroit and all that sort of stuff here. But I guess a lot of it beyond those sort of basic things there is pretty surface level all the same. And so there's, not a whole lot of saving going on here other than, that one scene there with the lady.
Yeah.
And I guess the tree business. Anyway. And it's sort of like, maybe to a certain point, you could also take from that, sorry, all right, so we got this sort of Messiah vibe and figure, but that also in some ways kind of feels like another part of the corporate game to me. That, this is our savior for the city that's going to put all the crime away, and he is the ultimate good, and so now you should, be good citizens and worship him, just like your other icons here. And because, we're going to have news reports and people are going to be excited about him and all that sort of business, because we got a new hero in town to do all the good stuff for us.
I think that works fundamentally. I'd say that there's a slight change in the way that you're supposed to view the character at the point that he gets to the water walking, where he's becoming much more a individual, possibly more for the people sort of person than the corporate entity that he's presented as in the newsreels, etc., etc.
So a more human Jesus.
Which I also think that this just mildly occurred to me because I hadn't put a ton of thought into it before. As a non-religious person, I could be wrong here, but something seems a little suspect about the way they keep having these blatant Messiah figures and biblical imagery invoked in various films right before the characters start killing people.
Yep. So maybe the real lesson in all this is that, Messiahs aren't all they're cracked up to be.
Or you fundamentally misunderstood any of the stuff you read in Bible school.
Well, that too.
I somehow don't remember, not having read all the stuff, I somehow don't remember the story where Jesus was forced to kill someone because they knew that it was the only way to stop them.
It's like maybe like some pigs or something like that because they're filled with demons, maybe. But, just some random guy. No. So, yeah, it's always kind of really awkward when you have this sort of juxtaposition between, the Messiah imagery and murder. So maybe filmmakers should stop trying to go there, or I don't know, if you actually want to make a Jesus allegory of some sort, start with, maybe a false Messiah sort of figure gets sort of found out in this, and you actually have someone who's, maybe doing a little bit of the imagery stuff, but actually living a more appropriate life for that sort of role. It's like, they might not be, the full Jesus going on here, but you could definitely have a situation where they're not killing people. They're encouraging people to do good stuff. They're, resisting, the easy way out, that sort of thing. And you could have a much more cohesive and make sense, finally, please, come on, guys, sort of a Messiah story there. But that's not really this movie, but they use the imagery here, so figured we should talk about it a little bit.
You have a very interesting look at your Messiah figures if you look at, say, the way that the Messiah imagery is used in Robocop versus something like the newer Supermans, where you have Superman whose fundamental arc as a character is that he could use force to do anything that he damn well pleases and chooses not to, which is often the more difficult thing to do. Mm-hmm. And you have Robocop, someone who was made as a representation of the sanitized state violence, coming in to do violence for his own more human reasons. Mm-hmm. which are both weird things to put on your Messiah characters. I think Superman worked better before, but then when they put the Messiah stuff on, they did away with that part of the character, so...
Yeah.
I think both of them do violence. Both of them do violence, but for such fundamentally different reasons that it seems like Robocop might actually work better, because the violence he's doing is a reassertion of his humanity, whereas the violence that they do in the new Superman movies is just a, like, isn't idealism wrong?
Yeah, that's a terrible message there. So I guess maybe Robocop is a messiah, but for reestablishing your individuality and your own ability to make choices.
Yeah, stop sanitizing your own violent choices by pretending that they're okay just because you farmed it out to a state entity.
Yeah, take some responsibility for what you're doing. So, got anything else for us?
No, I think that's a lot of robot stuff. So probably time to let people have a break from all this junk we do for the Galaxy's favorite game show.
Hello, everybody. It is time for the Galaxy's favorite game show. Let me know if this is getting too much, Gupwin.
I don't think you have the cadence quite right.
Yes, I should try to be speaking with a little bit more momentum.
Yeah, there you go. He still has some emotionality. Yeah, it's smoothed out a little bit.
Yes. I am slowly recuperating my own humanity. Let us begin. The first prize that is being handed out today is the Reluctant Messiah Prize, which goes to Robocop. He died for the sins of the city and corporate greed, and then came back to life to fight crime, walk on water, and uphold the law, despite generally not wanting to have died in the first place. What does he win, Gepwin?
He wins the Cult of the Robot, which would be a really interesting way to take Robocop 2. But instead of the thing that they wound up doing, which was mostly influenced by writers' strikes.
The Cult of the Robot. It sounds intriguing. Maybe I should sign up for this. Our second prize is the Everybody Loves Robots prize, which goes to Bob Morton and Dick Jones, though different sorts of robots are involved for both of them. What do they win, Gepwin?
They win the Furby, because they could have just made fun child robots that were cute and made probably more money than whatever they were doing with this.
That is correct. And they could also learn about transcendental dentistry and becoming longer. Ha ha ha. Our third prize is the Boss of the Year prize, which goes to Clarence Roderick, because his gang seems to have a pretty high rate of turnover. Sometimes because of him specifically. You know, that whole tossing them out the back of the truck. What does he win, Gepwin?
Clarence wins a lot of independent contractors, because he didn't fire them. He's just let their contracts expire. Violently.
Indeed. A friend of mine recently had his contract expire. Thankfully, it was not violently, though he was still quite angry about it. Our next prize is the Human Factor, which goes to Lewis for realizing who Robocop really is, and kind of urging him to remember via their interactions. What does she win, Gepwin?
She wins a honorable retirement because she's like the only one at the end of this who's still working for the cops, and we need to get any of the good characters out of there.
Indeed. Perhaps she could forego the 2 days to retirement trope as well by just leaving immediately. Our final prize for today is the Whoops Prize, which goes to Ed209 for not detecting that the gun was dropped. Whoops. What does Ed209 win, Gepwin?
Ed209 wins hands so that he can violently hug criminals to death instead of having to shoot them.
That would be more effective and probably safer for the public. I will endorse this. That is all I have for today, Gepwin. Make sure to take us away, or else.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us, and Ed209 for guest lecturing. And thank you for being here on the Galaxy's favorite game show! So we're done with robots for a while. We need to go back to humanity. Actually, this is a pretty good juxtaposition thinking about it, because now we have to, like, not trust technology.
Don't trust the robots. Trust the robots. Don't trust the robots. Which one is it? Ah!
Yeah, science fiction really has a really hard time juggling that one.
Yes.
Isn't technology great? No, it's taking away our humanity. No, it's letting us do things we could never do before.
Yeah, if we make a machine that takes away the job of a robot, the robot loses something, right? That's the way that works, right?
Yeah. We have to defend the hardworking robots from automation.
So, yeah, we got an episode where the ship's computer actually features. So you might be thinking we're talking about data. No, we're talking about computers.
Yeah, just the computer. The next time, we're going back to Star Trek with the episode about ancient archaeology and death traps. It's basically Picard gets to be Indiana Jones, but with a giant spaceship instead of a boulder.
Yes. Though there is boulders.
There are boulders, yeah.
Just floating nearby. You don't have to, like, dodge them or run away from them.
Yeah, they don't try to squish you quite as much, but...
I guess they do dodge them at one point, but... So yeah, the next episode is called Booby Trap.
Yeah. Not the kind of thing Verhoeven keeps doing, where he has those, like, multi-gender changing rooms.
Booby Trap. Yeah.
Yeah. You remember it because it's the one where everyone critiques Geordi for something that I don't think was his fault.
True. Yeah, so we'll get it's a Geordi episode. The computers features, there Picard kind of gets tired of everyone, not being effective at their job at the end and flies them out of there.
Yeah.
I mean, spoilers, sorry.
I mean, something happens. Listen to find out.
They all die at the end. That's the real answer. Next time on Watchers of Tomorrow. Ha-ha! Booby! You have been listening to Watchers of Tomorrow, a podcast on science fiction media. Find and follow Watchers of Tomorrow on Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Spreader, Digital Podcast, and perhaps many more to come. If you enjoy our podcast, make sure to subscribe for more. And where possible, make sure to rate your experience or leave us a review. You may find Gepwin on youtube.com/Gepwin and Twitter @Gepwin. You may find me, Dr. Isix, on youtube.com/Dr. Isix and Twitter @IsixLP. Music is Waveform and Mori's Principle, both by DRKRN. You can also check out the Watchers of Tomorrow Discord channel. Make sure to share the experience with your friends, family, enemies, and alien overlords. If you feel you are suffering from transporter syndrome, please be aware that the next time you step off the transporter, that you, that is now, no longer exists.